I mean, we're both adults. We're both busy, and that's...
Sorry, over my head, I've got a kitty conga line happening. I'm like, this kitty's like... Do, 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 do.
Enough treats, you know, you could train to do that
right?
one.
Hello, 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 and welcome to Well Shit. It really is that simple. I'm Claire.
And I'm Serena. On this podcast, we help you to understand about your 12 universal needs, why they are currently not being well met,
how to meet them in ways that work for you, and how to consistently do so in quick, easy, and simple ways that fit seamlessly into your life.
We'll also help you to understand how doing so will have a positive ripple effect in literally every area of your life.
If you like what you hear, please support us on Patreon.
And enjoy the show.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hey, everyone.
It feels like forever since we last sat here recording.
Forever in a day. Like, right? I can think back to it. It wasn't that long ago, but it feels like, I mean...
Feels like another lifetime.
Yeah. Like, in at least a different year.
Right.
Like,
absolutely. Just to put this into context, if you're listening, we last recorded, I think it was the beginning of August, because I remember we did... Like, it was August because it was before I went on vacation. And I went on vacation in the middle of August.
Holy shit.
Yeah. It's now towards the end of November. So in terms of actual months, it hasn't been that long a space of time. But a lot has happened in that space of time.
That is an understatement of the century.
I'm really hoping that by the time this goes live, that we'll have an update on this situation that is positive. But one of the things we've been working on is, as you know, we've spoken about this previously, that I was in the process of trying to apply for my US working visa, and the original application went in January. Thank God I didn't hear back until after my vacation, because it would have ruined my vacation completely. But it was a bit of a rude awakening to kind of come back to. It was definitely a bit of a shock. They basically sent a request for more evidence, and we fulfilled said request.
You want more evidence?
Here you go. So if you didn't see the pictures that we shared about it, which were kind of funny, I mean, and just to clarify this, we responded and gave them everything they asked for. It wasn't like we padded it with loads of stuff. We legitimately responded to the requests.
We're thorough.
Very.
Like, you wanted it here, you wanted it here, you wanted it here. We're going to make it super easy. You don't have to look for it.
Well, and that was also what we were advised to do. That was one of the things that one of the professionals this is what they do. They said, don't expect people to cross-reference, put it in every section they've asked for. So that resulted in a document that was more than 5,000 pages and nearly 54 pounds in weight that got sent to, I mean, I do feel a little bit for the person who's going to receive that, doom on their desk.
We needed a dolly to get it,
right,
to ship it out.
to be able to carry it, because it was too heavy to carry. So yeah, that went off. But obviously a document of that magnitude, yeah, it took some putting together. It was a little bit of work involved. And then before that, we actually put together a report on the affordable housing, labour and mental health crises. So yeah, we haven't really done much. We've just been sat twiddling our thumbs.
You know. Nothing new, nothing exciting, nothing.
Well, and the funny thing is this happens frequently with us, because the plan has always been, just like, I'm just going to let you in a little bit in on the behind the scenes of the podcast. The plan has always been that we would get a little bit ahead of ourselves in terms of recording. We'd said we wanted 3 months to have a good buffer. And then what we would do is we would record one a week. And drip, and so that, because it would be easier in terms of recording and easier in terms of managing and what have you, and editing and all that sort of stuff. I don't think that's happened once since we started recording the podcast.
It hasn't.
No,
it hasn't. But we just recently did an episode on this, when it's, you set yourself up for things, and it's like, we have this time, we have this capacity right now, let's do it. And the intention is, we're going to then be able to do one a week and just keep it going more more condensed and live and
Well, just without being so intense, like the recording process. I mean, recording a podcast, it takes some energy. It's a bit intense. When you're recording like 4 or 5 episodes in a day for multiple days over a hi.
It doesn't matter how far I try to push away from you. Oh, my short. Oh, there we go.
Oh, you fit
We
too.
need
Where's? Okay, go. She's going to be back. If you're not on the video right now, just jump onto YouTube or Patreon and just check this out because it's funny. I love the fact that she's trying to crawl so we can't see her on the screen, but look, it's a niggle monster.
Ah, give me your niggles. Why do I feel like he needs to be talking into the mic?
But so if you're not watching on the video, I'm not even going to spoil it for you by saying what is happening on the video right now. I'm just going to say go check it out because it's funny.
I should probably get my shit together. Hold on.
Well, it might be good to get your headphones back on so you can hear what's happening.
I can hear.
Oh my goodness! I got a feeling he's going to be our like token niggle monster that whenever niggles come
Oh,
up.
look at he looks.
Oh
Man. Oh, yeah.
There we go. We have a niggle monster present. This is what happens when you start clearing niggles. Niggle monsters.
They appear.
They're cute, but they're cute and cuddly.
They are.
That's the whole point. Anyway, sorry, we do need puppets. I have a feeling.
I can't take myself seriously now looking at the video back.
You know what's really funny is that we have some very good friends of ours who have a band called Astro Yeti, and they have puppets in all of their videos. And not only that, they actually are having puppets made. I don't know if they've done now of each of the band members.
Okay, I was going to say then we get our puppets, right? The groupies.
I'm like, we need to get our puppets for the podcast. Like, I just like, oh my goodness, how cool would that be? We could do a puppet episode. We do a puppet podcast.
A puppet cast?
A puppet cast. Oh my God. I've totally forgotten what I was saying before this, but this is fun.
Would you like puppets?
Yes. If you want puppets, tell us.
Yes. If you want puppets, like let us know and it will motivate.
We're
puppets.
Totally.
Larry has a cape. We are getting him.
Oh yes. The Larry episode is definitely on point. What were we saying?
It must have been something about.
Oh, we were talking about. No, we weren't. It was the puppets. There was the hands going on through the screens. So yeah. So basically, that's how we were planning. Was to not do it so intensely because it is an intense process. But every time we get caught up and we're like, okay, we've got several in the bank now. We can relax and we can do one a week. Some other massive project lands on our desk. It's like, oh God, we've got a deadline on this now, and we have to put the podcasting on hold. And we put the podcasting on hold, and then we're like, oh shit, we've got to record a bunch again. So that's basically what's happening. And we're in the same situation right now because I'm actually moving out of here at the end of this year. So we won't be in this space, and we're hoping to find somewhere cool locally to record so that we can continue to do this as we have always intended to and never actually done it. It's
good to have dreams.
Yeah, I mean, goals. #life goals. #podcast goals. So yeah, but that's not how we've done it. It's not how we're doing it. And this is why it feels like such a long time since we've done this, because wow, it's been a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, it's been a minute. But the good news is we're back. And not only that, but we've also the niggle monster, I've got a feeling, is going to be very mischievous on this podcast. Yeah, you got to watch the video. That's all I'm going to say. You just got to watch the video.
I had to actually take him down because he's distracting me a little bit. He's not going to go far. You may see him again this episode, but I don't think you need me giggling at myself the entire time.
To #anything new?
True.
Well, I mean, the good thing is, it was funny actually. I was editing one of our podcasts the other day, and when I'm editing, I'm also going through and checking for the show notes. And I realised midway through that I wasn't actually taking the show notes because I was actually enjoying listening to it. Like I was being entertained by our podcast so much that I forgot what I was actually doing.
These two girls are funny.
Yeah, I like these. I think we could be friends with these two. Anyway, long introduction aside, hi, we're back. Obviously not for you because you heard us last week, but we are back. And today we are talking about something that we've seen coming up quite a lot in life, in our online community. I've heard people say this a lot over the years, and it's it's because of how it's perceived versus what it actually is. And there's not an understanding of what it is. And what we end up doing is we end up judging ourselves for it, or we judge other people for it. And in doing that, we then want to stop doing it, which means we stop doing the thing that's meeting our needs, and we end up compromising our needs. And we thought it was really important to talk about that. So today we're talking about...
I'm sorry for rambling.
Right? So this happens frequently. And it was funny because the reason we decided to do an episode on this was because there was like a week-long period where it came up twice, very significantly. Was in a situation with you and a friend of yours, right?
Yes, it was.
And then it also came up in our online community. So every week in our online community, we have a post that goes out on a Tuesday called the support space. So it's a space where if people need a little bit of support, they want to be witnessed, they need a little love sent their way, they can just post and get support from the community, or be witnessed by the community, or be heard by the community. And somebody in there basically put this long comment on about all of these things that were going on in their life.
Big things.
Big things. Very big things. And at the end of the post, this person said, "I'm sorry for rambling." And as soon as I read that, it kind of hit me. I was like, wait, that's not rambling. That's processing your experience, either through writing, or if you're doing it verbally, doing it out loud, like doing it through speaking. And I don't think that people realize how important sometimes like writing something out and speaking things out can actually affect our processing, and in a good way. It can really benefit us. The thing about it is a lot of people know this, that when you are writing, a different part of your brain activates. So you're going to access different information when you do that. That's why a lot of people like to physically journal in like with pen and paper, because of that like brain activation. It's also true that by talking, you activate different parts of the brain that can help with the processing. So for example, if you are feeling highly emotional about something, what happens is the amygdala is the part of the brain that lights up. Now, the amygdala is also the part of the brain that is responsible for the trauma responses like fight, flight, freeze, fawn, flood, and fatigue. If you don't know about that, have we actually done an episode where we've gone through all of those?
I believe we've mentioned them before, but...
we're going to do a trauma episode where we actually go into we need to do a trauma episode where we succinctly and seamlessly go through the 6 different types of trauma, because the last time we talked about trauma on a podcast, it went from 3 to 6 in the space of about 10 minutes, I think, because I was creating content on the fly as we were recording.
I love how you say seamlessly, like that's a possibility with us.
Seamlessly. Let's put it that way. But also, I think it would be really good for us to kind of talk about the 6 trauma responses, the fight, flight, freeze, fawn, flood, and fatigue in the context of needs. So we'll do a podcast on that. I was thinking the other day we need to do another trauma one, because that first one, it's a little meandery, shall we say, to get to the point. But anyway, so when the amygdala lights up, that's the part that also is responsible for those responses. And what it can do is it can actually affect sometimes our logical processing, because it's the part that's very much associated with emotions, which is great. There's nothing wrong with it being active. But also when we start speaking, what it does is it sometimes quietens down the activation of the amygdala, which means that we can logically process things in a different way. So it means that we don't want to say that there's any way of doing this that isn't right. It's just saying that these are additional tools. They're additional things that can help you with processing the experiences that are going on in your life, because processing your experiences is so important. We've talked about this time and time again. Mm-hmm. I mean, we process all the time with each other.
Yes. All the time.
How frequently do we like, okay, I've just got to share something. And normally that I've just got to share something is actually our shorthand for I need to process something and I want to do it out loud with you. And I haven't actually realized that until I've literally just said those words on this podcast, right?
Well, right there. Right. I was trying to find the place to put that in there. It's sometimes you don't realize something till you say it out loud. Like it can be in your head for days, weeks, months, years, but the second you say it out loud, you can be like, aha, or what the fuck was I thinking? Like how many times have you said something out loud and you're like, oh, I mean, is that just a reaction I do a lot lately? Like,
that reaction happens way more than you would imagine with Serena. Like literally that sound, I kind of want that sound as a ringtone, like that, because that literally is what happens. And it's funny because I remember that when I very first started training as a coach and mentor many years ago, I read a book called I think it's called How to Coach a Woman, and one of the things that
Please tell me it was written by a woman.
It was written by a woman. That was at least one of the benefits. And I don't necessarily agree that this is just about how to coach women. Let me caveat that. And obviously then you get into what happens when you have people who are non-binary or transgender and everything. So there's a whole, I'm not recommending this book by any stretch of the imagination. But one thing that really kind of jumped out at me, and I do think this is true for a lot of people, I think the only reason that in this particular instance she was saying this was a good way to coach women is because women have been socialized to talk. Like women socialized to talk amongst our family members, amongst our friends, where in ways that other people might not have been socialized. So I think that's the reason it came up in that context. As I said, not so necessarily something I recommend. But one of the things that was said was if you actually just let them talk, that they will actually often find the solutions themselves, because they actually often know their situation better than anyone, but through actually talking it out loud, they get to articulate it. They sometimes can visualize it in a different way. Because in order to put it into words, you have to be able to organize it in some fashion that sometimes doesn't happen within our heads. Our heads are like, it's like a freaking pinball machine where it's like ping, 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 ping. Like all of a sudden, like, it's like you're thinking about and you're halfway through this thought and then you're over here and then you're over there and then you're over here and then you're over there and what have you.
She's always in my head, so she knows what it looks like in there.
Funny. It's one of those ones that lights up as well. It's cool. Yeah.
There's pyrotechnics. I mean,
all of the things, glitter spraying from every direction. But
that would be a badass
pinball machine.
I'm trying to say don't say ping pong, don't say ping pong, don't say ping pong, but yes, pinball.
Yeah, right. I'm like, yes, the Universal needs pinball machine. Watch this space. So,
because we need another project.
Right? No, we don't. Podcast first. Let's get focused on this. So the thing about it is that when we are in our minds, because we ping, like we can ping around so quickly, that might still be happening while we're speaking it out loud. But also what we tend to do is we tend to thread things together in a way that we sometimes don't when we are internally thinking about them. And so often in our society, this concept of speaking a lot or speaking for a period of time is judged as being wrong or is judged as being not the way that you should do things. And that kind of working, like sorting through your thoughts out loud is considered rambling or is considered like...
It's considered a burden.
Yes.
I'll get into my example in a little bit, but like that's one of the underlying kind of emotions that seems to be, people are like, I'm sorry for rambling. Like, I'm sorry for unloading on you. I'm sorry for processing in your presence. Like, no, you're processing. You're speaking it out. I call it throwing, like, I think it depends on what the situation is. Like, sometimes we clear things. Sometimes, can I just say something? And for me, like, if I know that a conversation may go nowhere and I'm just spitfiring ideas and I just need to get them out of my head, I'm like, let's throw the spaghetti at the wall. Like all the fucking spaghetti you can throw at the wall.
Yeah.
So it sets up the situation for like, okay, Serena is about to just blurt out every thought that's in her head.
She's chucking stuff at the wall. Duck!
Yeah, like what is gonna stick? But by the end
and normally I just get to sit back and go, oh, that one stuck. Did not expect that to stick, but it did.
Yeah, and then sometimes I'm like, oh, and this good one, and it's like, and I'm like, all right, well, yeah. Or I say it, and as it's flying towards the wall, I'm like trying to get it back. I'm like, no. I realize as it comes out of my mouth, nope, that's not a good. Okay, that.
Bye.
Yeah.
There it is.
But it's rambling is not bad. Like, it's...
Well, and I think that you're right, that there's the kind of spaghetti at the wall, like that tends to be like ideas. I think that it's like I'm trying to process through the ideas I've got. There's the I'm sharing something to clear it, which is like I've got something in my head right now and I need to process it quickly out. Like I'm not looking to have a big conversation about it, but I just want to get this out of my headspace so I don't have to, it's not swirling around there with all the 55 million other things that are swirling through my head. And then the third thing is I want to talk something through. And you may not know which of these you need before you actually start doing it. Like I remember the other day we had a situation between the two of us where Serena was wanting to clear something, and before we knew it, she was processing.
All of it.
It was stuff coming out that she didn't even realize she'd been thinking or feeling. It was just, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. Right, we're processing. Okay. So I think that the challenge is that because we don't often know what it is that we're doing, we can't set it up that way. If you don't know what it is, it's a little bit difficult to say to someone, hey, I just need to clear something, or hey, do you mind if I just process something through with you? The more aware you become of the fact that this is one of the modalities that works for you, as in like talking it out or writing it out, the more you can be like, oh, okay, I feel an urge to talk to somebody right now. Probably some form of processing is wanting to happen. So if you can let people know ahead of time, that definitely helps with this kind of feeling of being burdensome. I think part of the issue is that we have this idea in our minds, which is valid, that our relationship should be reciprocal, that there should be this reciprocity, and that each person should be taking up equal space, which over a period of time is absolutely reasonable, and that's exactly what we want it to be happening. There needs to be an equity in that sense. And that doesn't say that, well, Serena's processed for 10 minutes now, so I'm going to process for 10 minutes right now. And like, I mean, I'm kind of joking about that, but if you don't realize that what's happening is processing, and Serena speaks for an hour and a half without pausing for breath, and I'm sitting there going, okay, like when's my turn to talk, kind of thing. Because if she doesn't realize she's processing, and I don't realize she's processing, I mean, that's what would have happened to me years ago. I wouldn't have realized that's what was going on. And I'd be like, I get to the end. And that's, I think, where a lot of the apology comes from. Is like, what we're actually saying is, I'm apologizing for taking up space. I'm apologizing for taking up more space than I think I should be. I'm apologizing for taking up so much space that maybe there isn't the equal amount of space for you in this same interaction, which is what I would like, because I want things to be reciprocal. But rather than saying that, I mean, I have another good friend of mine where we do this a lot. And there are some times where I'll get, like, we speak once a week, and I'll get on the phone and I'll be like, and then before I know it's like 50 minutes has gone past. I'm like, oh, wow. I apologize for taking up so much space in this call. I really appreciate, and I'm thanking her for it, because I know she understands I'm processing as well. It's not like she's like, okay, thanks for taking up all the space. She understands what's going on. So I thank her for holding that space for me to be able to do that. And I think that, but I also know that there are going to be moments where she's going to take up an hour of our time and I'm barely going to get to share anything that week. And that's okay. As long as there's reciprocity over a period of time. And I'm not talking about over a day or a week or a month even. I'm talking about like over a, say, probably 3 to 6 month period. You want to be in rough reciprocity unless there's something major going on. So for example, when Serena was going through her cancer diagnosis, I wasn't like, okay, it's 3 months, my turn.
You done? Good. I got some shit to tell you.
Exactly. And when she was going through that, I didn't share with her. I found other people to process and share with. And when she was feeling more up to it, there she was, and we kind of got caught up on things. Same thing when I was like up to my eyeballs in visa application stuff. Serena wasn't like, okay, sorry, we've spent enough time on the visa today. I got some stuff I want to deal with. Like, that's not how this works. You've got to be mindful of like life experiences and where that's gonna, the pendulum is gonna swing. But life happens to everybody, so the pendulum is gonna swing at some point. And as long as that swing is gonna happen at some point, it makes a difference.
I just want to touch on something that you said really quickly, because it resonated with me. So often when people get done with a quote, air quoting, quote unquote, rambling session, they apologize.
Can we just call it what it is? A processing session.
A processing session, yes.
Yeah.
From here on out, as long as I remember it, processing session. it often ends with the apology,
Yeah.
and switching that apology to a gratitude.
Yes.
Just that simple, like, okay, I feel like something needs to be said, and we're conditioned to say sorry. I mean, I feel like that's something we are conditioned, like, immediately say sorry. Well, I'm not necessarily, like, I'm appreciative that you're here and that you're somebody I can process to and all of this stuff. So thank you for that. Thank you for holding the space. Thank you for giving the time. Change the sorry to thank you.
Right. Well, and also in that context, as I said, so quite often we don't realize we're processing until we're in it. And sometimes we don't realize it until we're done with it. It was like, oh.
And sometimes we don't even realize. I mean, there's so many times where I've come in, I've dumped on Claire, and then I've just been like, doo-doo-doo, and she's like.
No, she's processed with Claire.
Processed.
I mean, you processed with Claire, you processed with Claire. I don't care. I don't give a shit
Yes.
which accent you've done it in. Like, you've processed with Claire. You have not dumped on Claire.
See, but that
right.
The conditioning, right?
Out,
like we're all in it. It happens to everybody. It happens to the people who teach. Like it's such a real thing.
Yeah.
And there's times that I've gone through and processed so much stuff, and then I just sit there and I'm like,
because it's exhausting.
It's exhausting, and then I forget the follow up, which should always be like, and how are you?
Well, no, I'm not going to say that the follow-up has to be and how are you, because again, that feels like it's in that tit for tat. I think that it depends on the circumstances. Like if there's like lighter stuff going on, it's like blah, 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 and it's not really kind of deep stuff that we're processing, and we don't check in with the other person, then that can be a bit like, oh, okay. But if we're just in our shit because we're processing some deep stuff, it's okay to not always check in with the other person. What I was going to say is that often it's at the end that we're like, when we've had that realization that, oh, hold on, I've taken up some space here. I've taken up some time. I've done, this is a lot for somebody to read, or this was a lot for somebody to listen to. At that point, that's your indicator. Oh, I was processing. And at that point, you can say, wow, I didn't realize I had that stuff to process. I didn't realize I needed to process. That's obviously what I needed right now. Thank you so much for giving me the space to do that. And at that point, you're in the space where you can then be like, is there anything that you want to share about what's going on in your life? Or you can be like, actually, I really want to hear what's going on with you right now. I just need a beat to recover because that was a lot for me to process. Do you mind if we come back to you later, kind of thing? And for most people in that position, they'll be like, sure. Like if you're meeting your own needs, I'm not dependent on Serena to process. I often will process with Serena, but I mean, it was interesting that the example that we had earlier this week, where actually both of us had stuff up in that conversation. But her stuff was obviously affecting her more intensely at that point than mine was. I'm like, okay, I can hold space for this. She's deeper in it than I am right now, so I can hold space for her. And then once I'd held space for her and she'd like processed and kind of, okay, at that point, I was able to share some of what was going on at my end. But I think that's the thing is what ends up happening is we take up this space and we go, oh shit, I've taken up space. And we're so reluctant to do that. And that is one of the beauties of having safe spaces that you can go and having people that you can go to, is it's okay to take up space as long as you are also making sure that over time there is this kind of reciprocity and this mutual value exchange, that you're inviting them to take up space as well. That if you're in a situation where for 20 years, whenever you speak, one person is taking up 95% of the space and the other person's taking up 5%, that's not okay. That's an inequitable relationship, and there may be boundaries or there may be conversations that need to be had. It may be that dynamic actually as a relationship doesn't work for both people. But over a period of time, I think it's really important for us to go, oh, okay, even if we didn't realize we were processing, that moment where we go, oh God, I took up space, that's the moment of realization to go, hold on, I was processing. And that point you can then go, wow, communicate, I didn't realize I needed to process that. Thank you for holding that space for me. And it's a game changer.
Oh, definitely. And the more that you process and the more kind of in tune you get with yourself and can catch those things like, okay, I need to process this out. I need to talk this out. I need to write this out. I need to do whatever I need to do to kind of get it out of my head. Those processing sessions become much shorter.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's not everything, we've talked about the, what was the episode about the minestrone soup?
Oh, anger, judgment, and minestrone soup or something?
Yeah, it's kind of like
carrots. No, anger, carrots, and
minestrone. Was it minestrone?
I think it was. I think it was anger, judgment, and carrots. Emotional minestrone. I think it was something like
along
that.
those lines.
Yes,
we were talking about kind of that little pressure valve that once you release it a little, it's like okay, a little bit is off, and it's the same thing when you haven't processed stuff. Once you get into a space that you feel safe enough to actually do the processing, if you haven't done it in a while, chances are it's gonna be
right,
because it's just starting to come out and
yeah. I always describe it like I always say that our experiences, our emotions are a little bit like a little stream that kind of runs through our lives, and if we process those things as they come through, the stream keeps running. And what a lot of people happens is that they don't know how to process, so they in effect build a dam, and that dam ends up with this big buildup of water, and so people are terrified of like letting a little bit of the water out because they're afraid of being flooded. And what happens is that when we first let the water out, it can be intense. If you've ever seen a dam burst, you know that initially it's a little intense, and that's okay. And it takes a little bit of time initially for that backlog to come through. But once the backlog is cleared, at that point you can return to that steady stream again, and it becomes much easier. I know that one of the things that's really important is to as much as you possibly can, try to communicate this space ahead of time. Like, let people know, hold on, if you're like, something's coming. Like, I feel like I need to process. Like, is that okay? Like, have you got the capacity to hold space for this right now? Actually speaking to your friends before you're in that space, I mean, like, hey, I heard about this kind of concept of processing. Is that something that we might be able to do with each other? Like checking in whether that's something that you could do, and setting up that space with friends is really important. And how you set up that space is really important. And I know that you have an example with your best friend that is a beautiful example of this, and like how you can do this in a way that people get to process the way that they need to, in a way that works for everybody.
And that's the main thing, like what works for the person that you're processing with, to all of that. The more harmonious that relationship is,
and for you as well. That's for both.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did I not? In my head, I did both ways, but
I think that you only spoke about them.
Both.
Yes.
All four
of them.
All four of them.
Again, watch on the video.
Oh, not enough espresso in the world this morning, apparently. Anyway, my best friend Melissa and we during I think it was during the pandemic, we became really fond of poloing back and forth.
If you don't know what Polo is, Marco Polo is an app where you do video, where you record video messages and you send them to somebody. And a little bit like a text message, they wait until the other person is available, or the person can watch them live. But it's like a text messaging, but with video back and forth. So if you context to the term poloing.
Yes. And it was something I had never heard of before. Claire was like, "Oh, Marco Polo," and I'm like, Marco.
Yeah.
Like,
Polo.
Yeah, I had no clue what she was talking about. But especially during that time, the face-to-face, even if we weren't talking directly like back and forth to each other, seeing my people's faces really did something for me. And my best friend Melissa and I realized for us that was a big thing, because she's a mother with a job and running a household and trying to keep a family, all of her kittens in a row. Yeah.
Kittens in a row.
Kittens in a row. If you tried to wrangle kittens.
That's my point. I mean, that's the whole, kittens don't go in a row, ever.
No. She does a pretty damn good job of keeping some sort of line. And I mean, we're both adults. We're both busy, and that's...
Sorry, over my head, I've got a kitty conga line happening. I'm like, this kitty's like...
Enough treats, you could train to do that
right?
One. And now you put your foot out to the left. And now you put it out to the right.
Anyway.
And I digress.
Or I distract you, either way.
And then I digress. The route is always the same, my digression.
Yeah.
So
hold on. I'm going to jump in there because that was me. I jumped into the middle of what you were saying with something that's distracting. I don't think the root of that is your digression.
not the
Result?
root, like the root, the not the root
Cause?
the root, the direction. Not like the root underneath, but the direction, like root, like ROUTE.
Oh, the root.
Root.
The root versus the root. Okay, root versus root.
And I was like, what? No.
I thought you were taking responsibility for my jumping in and distracting you.
No, you were the distraction. It's just, I was going to be...
The path is the same.
Yeah, the path is usually the same.
I was like, root? Really? No. Sorry, carry on. I'm going to stop distracting. Right.
No, you're not. Don't make promises you can't keep.
For the moment, anyway.
You get it live, you get well, not live, but you get it real because we're not editing this shit out.
No, that's true.
Anyway, so we set up this thing and it really worked well for us during this time because as we're doing our different things, we can connect. And as stuff was happening in both of our worlds, and especially when stuff is happening at the same time, I think that's one of the hardest things in friendship and relationship of any kind. Mm-hmm. When you're in it and then somebody else is in it, as
you've each got your own shit going on.
You've each got your own shit. Mm-hmm. And if you're, being mindful of the other person's shit, you're like, well, they probably need to process their stuff. Do they even have capacity to help me process my stuff? And going back and forth through these video chats, we realized we were processing to each other through the chats. And there was a lot of apologizing for rambling. And most recently this came up and it was, I'm sorry, I'm rambling. I'm sorry to dump this on you. I'm sorry. I know you have stuff going on. And it's like, no, we set this up. Like we set this up to do it this way. And we had
consent.
With consent. And we had a conversation before, or not before, when there was no shit going on. And it was like, okay, if I need you right away, what's the best way to get in touch with you? What should I do? This. Okay, so if you text me and you say 911, that means that like this is an emergency because I know you're going to see this. If you call and leave me a message, know that I'm not going to listen to that message until I have the capacity.
Right.
If you send me a polo, I will watch that polo as I have capacity to do it. So I'm going into it resourced. Mm-hmm. I'm not going into it depleted. If I know that there's some shit going on, or if I get into a polo and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this is heavy, I pause it. Mm-hmm. And then I come back to it when I'm resourced enough to be able to hold the space to take it in, to let her process. And at this point, she's already gotten it out. So she's started her process on her own, even though I wasn't there to respond to it. Then when I have the capacity, I respond back or witness whatever is called for in the situation. Mm-hmm. And it's been such a beautiful thing because we still feel that connection. We're still there for each other. We're still getting to have that closeness and feeling like we know what's going on in each other's lives, but it's not in a way that burdens us at all, really. Right. I mean, because I go there and I know, okay, if there's something going on, like she knows that if I don't have the capacity for this, I might pause this.
Right.
But I will come back to it.
Yeah. Well, I think the same thing can be true of text messaging. Like I've been around people who was like text message after text message after text message after text message. It's like, whoa, I will respond. And I have when I've got the capacity, I have a good friend, a dear friend in the Netherlands, and we have it set up that we do voice notes to each other on WhatsApp. And I know if I send her a voice note, she may not listen to it for a week or 2 weeks, and vice versa. Like that's how, like we've got it set up that we can process in that space. Same thing. It's like if I don't have anyone to process with live, and I really feel like I would like that, I will process with. I've got another friend, a woman that I work with, Denise. I will process on voice notes to her. So it's like there's multiple ways of doing it. The key thing is to do it as much as possible with consent, like to ask and check and make sure that you're both in agreement. This is something you're willing to do, and be willing to say no if that's not something that works for you, and say, I don't have the capacity for that. I have the capacity for, or this is the way of doing it that would work for me. Like, it's okay to set up different rules with different people. I don't like the word rules, but you know what I mean? Like different ways of doing things with different people. And the other thing I want to say is that if you don't have a safe space to do this, if you don't have a person, so I'd say if you don't have a Serena, I don't think anyone else is Serena.
Melissa does.
Well, I mean, most people don't have Serena, don't have a Serena. I mean, they might have a Serena, but it's not a Serena. Then if you don't have a niggle monster, any of those sorts of things, if you don't have a safe space to do this, there's a couple of options that we can suggest. The first is,
I'm going to jump back really quick before I completely lose this.
Yeah.
Another thing is too, like, if you're in it and you have something you need to process and you want to respect that consent, that like a mutuality. Is that the...
Yeah, neutrality is a word. Yeah.
I have to check sometimes.
I'm not sure if it's the word you mean yet because you haven't said it, but it's a word. Yes.
There could be debate on either.
We have had some moments where a different word's being used, and I'm like, what? And do you mean this word? Oh, yeah, that's the word I mean. Cool.
A lot of times when I'm coming with something heavier a lot, I'll say when you have the capacity, if you have time. Like I'll send something in an email rather than a text message, and then I'll send a text message, hey, something in your email if you get a chance to read it. Like, kind of giving the caveat, like, okay, I need to get this out right now. You're the space where I feel the safest, and whenever you have capacity, if you have capacity.
And it sets the level of urgency as well. You actually did that this week with something where you had something you wanted my input on. It was nothing of any grand importance. It was something that you could use my help on, and I'm sure we'll end up showing about it on another podcast episode.
I cannot wait. I cannot wait. I'm gonna leave everybody in suspense, but
it was it was fun. But again, she knew I was busy. She knew I was kind of tired still. I'm still recovering a little bit from the visa stuff. So she sent it on email. She was like, when you have capacity, no hurry whatsoever. And it was like, okay, I know what this is. It's not the same as Serena says, like 911, like shit's going down. Which interestingly, we had another incident of this week where I tried to call Serena and she didn't answer the phone, and she was like, I can't talk right now. Are you okay? And I'm like, not really. Having an allergic reaction right now. Need my people to know about it in case I have to go to the ER. And at that point, Serena was like, oh shit. And she was checking on me regularly on text message because that's what she had the capacity to do. That's what she was able to do within the circumstances she was in. And
I knew if Claire called me, like Claire knows that, I mean, I don't pick up my phone for anyone. I just don't, I'm not a phone like it's one of those things. But when I saw her call, I'm like, okay, it's not one of those things where I know she's running an errand that she needs my input on, and I'm like, okay, something's happening. Let me check in. Let me just make sure this wasn't a butt dial because this is weird.
Yeah.
And it allowed me to be there for her in the capacity I could be there for her. And I mean, it wasn't how I wanted to show up because I would have wanted to
drop everything.
Physically show up. But in that situation, it's like, okay, this is what I can provide.
And I knew I had other people I could call on, and there were other people who were not able to. But as it turned out, I ended up hanging out by myself, like riding it out on my own. But I was doing it with the support of people, like people checking on me. I was okay. I knew if I needed somebody here, there were a bunch of other people I could have called. And I'm like, no, like where I'm at right now, this feels like the right way of doing it. But like that kind of communication makes a real difference. So it does help if you can do it as much as possible with consent and setting up that space and checking in and what have you. If you don't have a space in which you can do that, if you don't have a person you can do that with, there's a few options that I think can be very helpful. The first is journaling. So actually just writing it down to yourself, even writing a letter to someone that you're never going to send. Like that can be a good way of doing it. And as you said, like different parts of the brain activate differently when you write. So that can be very helpful.
The letter you're never going to send has been one of the most therapeutic things for me. And sometimes it turns into the letter I do send after like the 9,000th revision on it. But getting it out.
I've looked at it a couple of times.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But I always tell, like, this is one of the...
Censor it a little bit.
Censor what? It's not like I have a potty mouth or anything.
Censor, just articulate in alternate language. We'll put it that way.
Did you really want to say this with that tone? Yes, I did. Maybe you shouldn't. Probably not. But that's the thing, like... I've written letters.
What's your outcome? Is this going to help you create your outcome? If it is, great. We'll leave it in. If not, maybe we reword it so it does create the outcome you're looking for.
I suggest, like, if you're writing something where you have emotion, where there's processing involved, write 3 drafts, write 4 drafts, write 26 drafts if need be. But
write the first one gutturally.
Yes.
And by that, I mean, like, everything you want to say in every language you absolutely wish you could say with how you are feeling at the moment, because it clears it out of your system. It really helps you process.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna another episode in the works. I have to bring it up now just because I think it's really important. Another episode in the works, kind of like the other one I can't wait for, started with a letter like this. And it was a letter I was writing, a professional letter that I was writing to somebody. And I was seething. I mean,
rightfully so.
Rightfully so. I mean, it was a fucked up situation. And I was like, and one of the things I said in it, which was 100% true, was I haven't felt this way since I watched my mother die. And I mean, that was the sentiment. That is how I felt. Like I had not feel that ripped apart since then. And I wrote that, and it was 100% how I was feeling. It wasn't to get my needs met by anybody. It was like that. That
is how you felt.
It's just how I felt. And it's like, I knew I couldn't send that.
No. Well, I'm gonna tweak. You could have sent it. I could have sent it. You didn't want to send it, and you wouldn't have chosen to send it because it wasn't in alignment with getting the outcome that you were looking for from this message.
Yes, true. And it wasn't.
And she absolutely could have sent it.
And you're right. I absolutely could have sent it. And that's not actually something I would have wanted to give that person. Like. It was something personal within me that I felt. And it was like Claire said, it had nothing to do with the overall situation. It was just how that situation made me felt. And from a business perspective, didn't need to be said, but I needed
the emotion first.
Yeah, I needed to clear that emotion so that every time I was revising, I wasn't trying to think of that thing. And I mean, so really just getting it out and putting it all out there. Speaking it out. I know I'm jumping ahead, but speaking it out, sometimes just speaking it out to yourself, looking in a mirror, just sitting on the couch and just saying the words out loud, like, I fucking hate this. Like, right. And just let it out.
Like if writing isn't your thing. And the next option that we were actually because segues beautifully into, if you have ever seen Grace and Frankie, which is a show that we both very much love.
If you haven't seen it, give it a shot. I mean, I haven't found anybody that's like, I honestly haven't found anybody that's like, oh, I watched it and meh. Yeah. It's just,
it's so good.
It's good.
So in it, Lily Tomlin plays this character, Frankie Bergstein. And what she does is that one of her ways of processing, I'm not sure even she probably would actually use that term. Yeah. Is she has, she does 2 things. She does an imaginary diary where she like writes in the air to herself.
Such a good character.
Love it. And then the other one is that she actually creates a video diary. So she videos herself talking out loud. So in the same way, you can do that. Like if you want to put it out loud, you want to see it, you want to hear it, that sometimes it can help to hear these things yourself. You can do it on a video. You can do it on an audio, like a voice note on your phone, on your computer. There's a whole bunch of different ways that you can do that without needing another person's presence. And then the final option that we're going to offer is that if you want this space and there isn't anywhere else for you, the Nourish Your Needs group on Facebook is one of the places that our community members come to be witnessed, to share, to process. And you can share in your own post. You can wait till the Tuesday support space comes around. But we've had people sharing just really beautifully, but also really like tragic and painful things that they haven't got the ability to share anywhere else in their lives, and they have somewhere. And the good thing is, the thing with the support space is that the support space, just to caveat this, it is not somewhere you come for advice. It's not somewhere you come for guidance. You can request that specifically if that is specifically what you are after. But the support space is literally just to get support. That is to be heard. It is to be witnessed. It's to have people say, I hear you, I see you, I feel you. Have someone send you some love, like to send you some supportive energy. It's not somewhere where everyone like piles in with all these different solutions, which may not be what you're even looking for, because so much of processing, you just want to be witnessed. And most people don't have a space where they can be witnessed. And that is the one of the most healing balms, I think, when we're in this space that we can get.
And if it's not our group, like find
where somewhere else you can do it. Great. Yeah.
You need to just find your space to do it.
Yes.
And it until you start doing it consistently, like most things, like the more you do it, we're going to actually do an episode about kind of the ding, ding, dings, but like the more you do it, the more you're like, ooh, that feels good. Ooh, that feels good. And then it's like, ooh, that feels good. And that, and that, and that, and that. Like, and then you feel like lighter and clearer like they're not always up to your throat with something, because I feel like there was so long I walked around with that like knot in my throat, and I was like, what the hell is this?
And it's funny because everyone has like a different version of it. Like if you're on the video, you'll see like Serena's like here at the front. Mine, it's like the back of my throat. It's like just beneath my ears, and like I can almost physically feel it there, where it's like everything is like I'm swallowing to try to keep it from tumbling out of my mouth.
I think that shows our self-control a little bit better. You stop it here. I'm like literally biting my tongue to keep shit in sometimes. It's like,
yeah, it's just how people the physicality works differently for different people. But I think that it's really it's helpful to start to realize that that so much of these things that we do that we end up apologizing for or feeling bad about are actually just different ways of meeting our needs. And it may be that it does feel like a burden to this person because they don't have the capacity to hold space, because they haven't done enough of their own work to be able to hold space for you. Like it does require you having to meet you having met your needs and clearing your own stuff so that you have the space to hold that for somebody else. Not everybody has that. And there are spaces where you can find that. We have one of them. And the cool thing about this is that the more that you do it, the more you also teach those around you that's what could. Serena would never, I don't think she would have ever used the term processing before she and I met.
Data processing. That's another process. Yeah.
You wouldn't have. You certainly wouldn't have used,
capacity. We were talking about that the other day. I'm like, everybody uses the word capacity. She's like, you did it a couple of years ago. I'm like, oh shit.
She's like, now, but here's the thing. She said, now all my people use it. I'm like, that's because you use it. Like, it's not because it's something that was in the current
hashtag
zeitgeist.
Capacity.
Right, exactly. It's
it really should be hashtag capacity.
It should be. And the same thing with like processing and with clearing and niggles. Like Serena didn't even know nobody knows what a niggle is normally until, the niggle monster knows what a niggle is, but nobody knows what a niggle is until I explain it normally. Serena didn't know about these things. She didn't know about capacity. She didn't know about processing. So because that was how I operated like that with her. And all of a sudden she's like, hold on, this is some good shit.
Like, wait a minute, this feels good. Change is hard, and change doesn't feel good at first usually. Not always, but I was gonna say, this is one of those places, like the second I started doing it, I was like, like
I can exhale.
This is
and it's interesting because I actually had a client earlier this week where the second the session started, like this person was like physically constrained, like trying not to, because they didn't know how to process. And it was like, And I, midway through the session, I was like, I can feel you holding in your body this, because you're afraid of what's going to come out, because what's coming out often isn't what your true being thinks. It's not what your logical brain knows. That's why we say send the first version of the letter is normally unreasonable, overreactive, whatever else you want to call it. It's the intensity of the emotion that creates those statements in those moments. It's like, this person's a complete bitch. We don't think they're a complete bitch, but in that moment, that's how it feels because of this thing that I've got going on and the intensity of emotion that I'm experiencing. And so it was interesting, like as soon as that person started to process those emotions, like I literally felt and watched their body like relax, because they weren't holding it anymore, because we're so afraid of our emotions and we're so afraid of what we feel in these intense moments. We don't want to say the wrong thing, we don't want to do the wrong thing, we would blah, blah, blah. Like it's like in those spaces, and I often describe it like when I work with couples, I describe it like taking out the trash. I suggest that each of them, when they need to process, like they imagine they're holding a trash can or a rubbish bin if you're from the UK, in the center of the space. It's not within them. You don't take it on. You hold it in front of yourself, and you basically allow this person to dump everything into the trash can. All you're doing is you're helping facilitating them taking out the trash. And then when they're done, okay, right, you chuck that away because it's not yours. It was never meant for you. It's not personal. It's not about you. It's not for you. It's just their process. And I think that having that visual sometimes can really help people to realize that this is just, it's getting out the trash. It's getting out the toxicity that comes up with the emotions and the meanings that sometimes we put on these things.
Something that's really helped me when you're talking about the whole, like that kind of fear of, I don't know what I'm going to say, I'm not sure if any of this is going to making sense, stating that right up front.
Yeah.
Like just clear that part from your head. Like, okay, you're like, oh, this is going to go everywhere, and then I'm going to stress out because it's going everywhere, and I'm going to try and connect dots that I don't even know if they exist. Saying right up front, okay, I don't know what's going to come out. I'm really charged right now. It may not make sense.
I probably don't believe a fraction of what I'm about to say. I just need to get it out of my system.
Mm-hmm. Like I need to just say this because I'm thinking it. And the second you can get it out in some way.
You get it out, you can look at it, you go, yeah, no, not really, and it's like gone, kind of thing. Like it's the intensity that we feel is often because we're holding on to it because we're afraid of putting it out there. When in actual fact, when we put it out there, it's like, oh, yeah, that's not what I feel at all. That's just the intensity of emotion and my compromised needs speaking. It's them going, I'm hurt right now, I'm angry, I'm scared, whatever. And that's how it's manifesting in this moment. I just want to process that out of my system so I'm not carrying it around with me.
And it could be compounded with the other things that are in the backlog too. So once you take something out as an individual item, it's like, okay, like this doesn't feel how it did in my head because now it's here and I'm like, okay, we can process this part out, and then the next thing comes through and you're like, oh, that's why that was making that one so intense. And then
that's what happened this week. Like you shared the first thing that was bothering you, and before we know it, there's this flood of other stuff coming out, and I could see the look on her face. She's like, what the fuck is all this coming from? I had no idea any of this was in here.
It was like three of us on the couch.
Right.
What's your problem? I didn't know about those.
And actually the thing about it is that very little of what was shared in that space was necessarily true, or how Serena felt objectively when she was like not in that emotional intensity, but the overwhelm that she was feeling in that moment had her going, oh, this is happening, and I'm feeling this, I'm feeling this, I'm feeling this. I'm like, and because I didn't go, what the fuck are you talking about? You're feeling that. I was like, okay, all right, like, what else? Okay, what else is there? Okay, what else? I can hold space for this. And the second it was out, and like I remember there was one point where you could almost see her like running after the sentence that had come out. She's like, no, I don't really believe that. I'm like, it's okay. I don't believe that you believe that. It needed to be cleared. And if there is a part of you that believes that, well, let's address it, because I don't want you feeling that and you don't want you feeling that. But in actual fact, if you just needed to clear that because that's what's in the system, that's okay too.
And it was really interesting during that particular kind of session is after I had a moment, Claire had the opportunity to process some things, and we found that we were feeling on a couple of things the exact same way. So the fact we were able to...
It was business related stuff. It was stuff to do with the business. And we were like, oh, fuck, we're both feeling this.
Right. And so like to process it with the person that is the other person involved with it, there was something extra kind of healing and processy about
validating, yeah.
I like processy better.
Processy. There was something extra processy about that. I'm down for that.
You see? And I said it out loud and I'm like, Serena, that's ridiculous.
Well, and that was the thing, is that there were some things where it's like, oh, I don't mean any of that. And then there was like, hold on, actually, I know I do feel this. And actually, I feel this. And it actually led to us coming up with a solution within, I think, 24 hours. We had a new member of the team come on board because we were like, oh, there's this thing that we're feeling. Well, that's a valid feeling. Why don't we address that? Oh, okay, well, we've addressed it. Let's see whether this person would like to come on board and help us. Oh, yeah, they do. Awesome. Like, it was
done. And now we
there was a solution to the actual problem, but we had to clear the other stuff because like, I don't think Serena really realized that was a problem. And when she said it, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm feeling that too. Yeah, that's present for me as well. Let's solve the problem now. Mm-hmm. So it can be very healing in a number of different ways. Anything else you want to share? Anything more than Niggle Monster?
He had a squeaker.
He squeaks. I forgot he squeaked.
Me too. I almost did it like inappropriately during the thing when I found I was like, this isn't the time to introduce the squeaker.
Does your Niggle Monster squeak? I'm just wondering.
It does. It's like niggle, 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 niggle. Oh God, it really is a niggle monster. Like,
yeah,
I
really
usually
niggly,
pop the squeezer out of these things for. Is that niggling?
Yeah, let's not niggle our listeners more than we have to. I'm sure there are other things we do that niggle them. Let's not drive them to distraction with a squeaker in their ear. So, Niggle Monster, anything more to add? He's shaking his head, so.
I realized I tried to move out of the screen. My screen's half cut off because of our show notes on the side. I didn't get out of the screen, did I? I just hid behind my show notes.
Yeah.
Pretend you can't see me in that last clip.
You also didn't when you were crawling across the floor trying to not be in shot. I mean, it made it funnier. I'm going to be honest. The video for this is going to be hilarious. So enjoy. So if you've got nothing to share, I've got nothing more to share. This is an invitation for you to recognize that those things. And I just want to make this like the final thing I want to say about this is something that we often view as a negative trait in ourselves without realizing that it serves a really valid purpose. And we want to figure out how we can do that in a way that works for us and works for other people and doesn't compromise other people. Just start to look at what are the other quote unquote negative traits that you have? What are the other things that you do? And start to think about, well, what needs might that be meeting? And is there a different way of doing that still gets the need met, but doesn't feel like it's compromising myself or somebody else? Because that's really where the gold in this is, where you can start to realize that we're not just talking about rambling now. We're talking about anything that you are viewing as negative within yourself that you don't realize is actually meeting your needs. So I'm just going to leave you with that. And if you're not sure what needs it's meeting, send us a little comment, send us a request. We will do, we've had these about all kinds of different things that have come up with clients where it's like, I'm doing this and I don't know why. Because it's meeting your needs. It's meeting this, and this need. Oh, I'm doing this and I don't know why. It's because it's meeting this, and this need. That's the beauty of the needs thing. You put a needs lens on anything and it makes it a lot clearer and easier to understand. And it means if you want to shift it so that you can do something that is supportive of your needs, but also doesn't feel like it's compromising yourself or others, it becomes much easier to do it when you look at it in this context. So that's it for today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. Remember to stay safe. We're sending you lots of love. And between now and next time, remember to keep meeting your needs. Lots of love.
Bye, friends.
That's it for today.
If you like what you heard, please subscribe, rate, and give us a written review,
as it will help more people find us. And remember, that's not rambling, it's meeting your needs.
Well, shit. It really is that simple.